All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Master of Science in Cybersecurity information session. We have a lot of great information to share with you about the program, about Brown University. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I've got a lot of folks to introduce you to before we share all that great information. So I'll kick off introductions. My name is Victoria Bray. I am the Associate Director of Recruitment with the Division of Masters and Professional Programs, and I am here to answer any questions about Brown University and about the application process. And I will hand it over to Deborah to introduce herself.
Good. Thank you very much, Victoria. Welcome. Thank you very much for making the time to come and find out about our program and a little more about Brown University. I'm Deborah Hurley, and I'm the Director of Graduate Studies for the Cybersecurity Master's Program. I'm also going to introduce a few other people to you. One of them is Tara Leninger, who is our Student Affairs Specialist for the Cybersecurity Master's Program. You'll be hearing from two current students today. They are Kathleen Cohen and Raphael Carter, and both of them actually are graduating after this fall semester. So they'll be able to give you a perspective of the whole span of the program. They're just about to finish up. Next slide, please.
Fantastic. So we've got a lot of things to cover in the session and a couple of housekeeping items that I want to cover. So today we'll be here for, we have an hour booked. So we'll talk to you for around 30 minutes and then we'll have a good amount of time saved for Q&A. We'll talk about the program. We'll talk about the requirements, application-wise, as well as requirements to complete the program. And then we'll also do a live Q&A. Anybody who's attending this session, so anybody who's listening to me right now, is going to get an application fee waiver as a part of their attendance. Nothing that you need to do on your end to make that happen. When you apply, you simply won't be prompted to submit an application fee payment. We're going to accept questions through the Q&A. So as you have questions, feel free to submit those to the Q&A. What we've got folks answering hidden away. And then also, of course, we'll save some for the end if we feel like it's a common question that a lot of people would like the answer to. With that, I will hand things over to Deborah to talk more about the program.
Thank you again. All right, next slide, please. So just I'm going to give you a brief overview of our Cybersecurity Master's Program. One of the structural highlights of our program is its flexibility. So there are two formats. You can take this entire master's program entirely online or come to Brown and be an on-campus student. There are two tracks. So there's a computer science track and then a policy track. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a minute. And then there are two enrollment periods. So for spring 26, or for spring and fall, or fall and spring, thinking about it in typical academic terms, but in terms of the calendar, what's coming up next is spring 2026 admission, and the deadline for applying for that is November 1. And then also two fall 2026 admission applications opened on September 1. So I'm guessing we have in the people participating in this webinar, people both who are interested in spring 2026 admission and fall 2026 admission. In terms of our faculty, I won't take the time. We don't have the time to go into their backgrounds and their accomplishments and so forth, but we have a very extremely well qualified faculty who have had many accomplishments both domestically in the United States and internationally significantly as well. And so they are teaching the courses. Our courses are taught by Brown faculty. That's one of the distinguishing aspects of our program rather than bringing in outside people to teach. And we're also conducting research. Our students, whether a student decides to take the program as an online student or as an on-campus student, they are treated equally. The courses are set up equally to accommodate both kinds of students. We have an interdisciplinary curriculum. In fact, I say that interdisciplinarity is one of my religions. I'm very devoted to the idea that the most pressing problems before us largely cannot be solved by reference to only one discipline. And so we need that interdisciplinary perspective, and people need that interdisciplinary training to be able to provide that. So we are very committed to the idea of giving all of the students who come in a solid grounding across the cybersecurity domain. So you'll hear more about this in a few minutes. Students have courses, required courses in cybersecurity technology, cybersecurity law and policy, and cybersecurity management. So the purpose is that all of our students then leave with that basic holistic foundation in the field across all of those domains. And then, of course, they can go on to choose electives to specialize in, some of the things that interest them more, building upon that solid base. Also, too, we have strong industry partnerships and an alumni network. You'll be hearing more later about all of our career services that are available. Brown's been around a long time. We have an extremely robust alumni network and also a very active and custom, bespoke career services system where they're able to provide you almost any service you need to help you find a job. Next slide, please.
All right, so to speak a little bit more about the program structure, the program requires 8 courses for all students, which is standard by American master's programs. The program offers 2 tracks, like Deborah mentioned, each of which has its own core focus and requirements. So you will choose a track when you apply, and there are slightly different application requirements pertaining to the track that you choose. That being said, there is some overlap, allowing you to build on shared knowledge and to collaborate with colleagues in the other track across those disciplines, like Deborah mentioned. So, the computer science track, as the name implies, has a greater knowledge focus on computing. There is a heavy emphasis on Brown's established catalog of technical courses, and we will show you in a moment what a sample course load might look like. There are 3 required courses and 5 electives that you will select. And the policy track has a focus on cybersecurity from a management and a legal perspective. This track has a greater emphasis on writing, and there is no prior programming knowledge required to apply to the policy track. There are 4 required courses and 4 electives for this track. Next slide, please. So the program is designed for students to graduate in 4 semesters, taking 2 courses per semester. That's what we consider full-time. But it is possible, with the permission of your advisor, to temporarily enroll on a part-time status and take just 1 course this semester. Um, Above all else, we want you to be successful in the program, so this part-time enrollment may be an option if, for example, you've gotten a new job or if you're in the process of moving. Any sort of major life adjustment that wouldn't allow you to pursue full-time studies, we are flexible and we are familiar with, and we offer that option. We also, current Brown undergrads have the option to apply as 5th-year master's students. This would allow those students to complete the program in 1 year. In this case, they would apply 2 computer sciences that they've taken prior towards the master's degree, and then they would enroll in 3 courses for 2 semesters. You do need to be in your senior year to apply and uh, submit your application for the 5th year's master's programs, and we do have those deadlines outlined later in the presentation if you're here for that option as well. And then we can go to the next slide to take a closer look at classes.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Tara. So I'm going to walk you through a sample schedule, both for the computer science track and the policy track, just to give you an idea of the courses that you might take. These are structured spring, fall, because we're oriented right now towards spring 26 admission. But if you're applying for fall 26, just flip the order, and that'll tell you what you need to know. So someone coming in for spring of 2026, they might be taking CSC 2200. I'm just going to refer to them by the number going forward rather than repeating that alphabet letters beforehand. 2200, which is our cybersecurity law and policy course. And then also take 2660, which is the computer science security course. That's the technical computer science security course. Those are 2 of the 3 required courses for the computer science track. We encourage students to take their required courses on the early sides or get them under their belt. Then they have the confidence of knowing they've already got those done, and then they have a range of electives to choose from to fill out the additional 5 courses needed to arrive at 8 to graduate. But that varies. There may be various reasons why students might not do all the required courses first. So here in this case, this student is taking 2 of the 3 required courses in their first semester. Then in fall 26, they are taking 1310 and 2999A. 2999A is the management course, so the 3rd required course for the degree. And then 1310, Fundamentals of Computer Systems. It's a prerequisite for some of the electives that some cybersecurity master students might want to take. So if they are hoping to take or planning to take some of those later electives, then they would need to take 1310 and achieve that prerequisite. If they don't want to take those, they could take another elective at that point. Then after their first year, then the student has completed all the required courses and they go on to select from electives. So we've listed 4. These are 4 popular ones, but there's quite an array of choices. So here in spring 27, this student would be taking 1010, Theory of Computation, along with 1650, Computer Networks, and then finishing up in their last semester in fall 27 with 1650, Software Security and Exploitation, and 1951L, which is Blockchain and Cryptocurrency. So that gives you an idea of the trajectory of a computer science track student. Next slide, please. Okay, here we are in the policy track. So some of these courses, the required courses, there's a significant overlap in the required courses that both the CS track and the policy track take. So the students are taking those courses together. They take the law and policy course together. They take the management course together. Where they differ in their required courses is that the students in the policy track take a computer security technical course that was designed specifically for people with a non-technical background. That course is 10 years old. It was designed by one of our computer science professors and has been taught, repeatedly over that decade. And so it's one that works well to present the technical issues connected with computer security in a way that is digestible to non-technical people. Again, because we're very devoted to the idea that we want you to have that holistic, firm foundation across the entire domain. So here, this student in spring 26, they're taking 1880, which is Introduction to Computer Security. So that's that technical course for non-technical students that I just told you about. And then they take again 2200, the Cybersecurity Law and Policy course. In the spring, you can see they're taking 1360 and 2999A. So that latter one is that management course. For the policy track, as you may have noticed, there are 4 required courses. So that additional 4th required course is 1360, Human Factors in Cybersecurity. So that's a 4th required course for the policy track. Students in the CS track can take that as an elective if they wish as part of their degree, but it's required, as you will know, to the extent you know things about cybersecurity already, which many of you I know do. Humans are the most fallible link in the chain. It's not only the outside or external bad actor, it's also the range of good actors externally and significant threat from inside actors who don't have malign intent, but may be negligent, fatigued, or ill-trained, and so forth. So that course is meant to address that set of concerns and prepare students for that. Then, having finished all their required courses in their first year, this student could move on. And again, these are some of the popular courses, electives that are available to policy track students. So they could take 1800, which is Cybersecurity and International Relations, 2002, which is Privacy and Personal Data Protection, and then finishing up in the fall of 27 with Cybersecurity Ethics, and then, of course, 1805, which is called Computers, Freedom, and Privacy. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, now here's what you really want to hear from our students. So they are here to tell you about their experience in the program, give you their advice, and so forth. So I'm going to turn it over first to Kathleen Cohen. Kathleen, please.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Kathleen, and like it was said, I'm in my final semester here in this program. When I applied, I was originally on the computer science track. My bachelor's degree was in computer science, and I thought that the technical route was the route for me for my career. While I was working simultaneous to my first, I think, 2 semesters, I realized that I really was enjoying the policy courses that I was taking more. If I were coming home from the end of a long work day, I would want to pick up the policy readings that I had to do for those elective courses and not so much write the memory allocator in C. So I realized that I did want to switch tracks about halfway through. I had a conversation. It was actually pretty easy to apply or transfer over to the other track. Everyone here at Brown just wants you to succeed and be happy and learn in the best way that's right for you. So I switched over to the policy track, and that's what I'm currently on. Um, at Brown, this program really stands out to me for the technical rigor and that flexibility. The faculty really cares about you learning and growing. It's not like a check in the box or something. The projects that you get are very intense exercises, whether it is writing a memory allocator in C if you're on the computer science track, or writing a policy paper on some really lofty topic. There are really difficult assignments that you get, but then they're always paired with really personalized feedback. The professors will sit down with you and go over the code with you if you want. Or now I'm on the policy track. I love writing policy papers, and then the professor will leave comments throughout the paper, asking about, did you consider this? Did you consider this factors? And they're things that I never thought of before, and they really are helping me grow in all aspects in cybersecurity. I'll also say the cohort size is perfect here. Um, I'm taking the courses from San Diego, so very far away. I never really thought that I would be close to the other students in the program. I thought it would be more of a wave on Zoom and goodbye kind of relationship. But I really have found a community with the fellow students whenever the semester starts and you see all the names that you know on the Canvas page, and all the little group chats. It's really an environment of the students in the program aren't working against one another and competing with each other. We're all trying to help each other succeed and texting and working our way through assignments and sharing tidbits with each other. So it's a really great environment. It's also working with so many other professionals. I get to talk to people who are lawyers or they went the software route, and I get to hear their experiences. And it helps me decide what I want to do with my career. So I'm learning not just from the faculty, but the other students in my cohort. And that may be one of my favorite parts of the program. Um, yeah, I think that's all that I have to say for now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kathleen. Kathleen, if I could ask you to just give one piece of advice to these students, you have to limit yourself to one, what would it be?
Um, I would probably have to say, again, everyone here is so supportive and they just want to see you do your best and get the most out of this program. Of don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Whether that be something in your personal life. Brown is so equipped, the university, to help you in whatever you can think of. Even as a remote graduate student, I never felt I would be so supported by this university that I've never stepped foot on. But when it comes to personal issues, when it comes to if you're falling behind in a class, the professor wants to meet with you on Zoom and help you out. When it comes to next steps, I have gotten my tuition's worth out of the career center that we have, and the one-on-ones that you can sign up for. So, whatever it is, just be vocal about what you want and what you're looking for and ask for help when you need it. And Brown and this program will definitely give you all the help and more.
Good. Thank you very much, Kathleen. All right, next slide, please. Okay, it's time to turn it over to Raphael Carter. Raphael.
Hey, so I'll give kind of a quick overview of my background and why I kind of chose the policy course, and maybe I'll dig a little bit into the program. So yeah, my name is Raphael. I used to be a security engineer at Google for around a year and a half, and now I run a application security startup. It's venture backed, and we basically, it's primarily focused on like finding vulnerabilities at scale. And in Google, I did, sort of similar work, with red teaming and doing vulnerability research. And for me, the main kind of question I had, right, was how do you deal with these issues at scale? Because there's a lot of systemic issues that cause, these vulnerabilities to be present in organizations. There's different organizational incentives or, different, yeah, just different things like that. And so for me, there's ways to solve a lot of these, technical issues through like engineering, solutions, which is, what, I did at Google and what my company does now. But for me, the main, thing that interests me about the policy track in particular was looking at different avenues outside of just engineering to solve a lot of these issues at scale. And so that was sort of my, that's sort of why I chose the policy track in particular. And a lot of the work experience I have is just technical, so I didn't have the exposure to the policy side of things. Um, and yeah, I found the Brown program to be great. I like how it doesn't force you to be pigeonholed purely into just policy work. A lot of the classes and coursework is holistic, so it looks at sort of like the technical details, but also reins it in, with the sort of policy and governance side of things. Um, and it also allows you to take technical electives even as a policy student. Yeah, and also the faculty have been great. A lot of the professors aren't just academics. A lot of them have actually helped shape policy at like a national level. And so there's a lot of great expertise from the staff here. Um, Yeah. And so for me, like I've taken a lot out of this, program. I think there's a few main things I've learned. It's thinking beyond like a technical fix. And the second is, being able to consider like the full ecosystem. So stuff like stakeholders, regulations, organizational incentives. And for me, it like, kind of reframed how I think about a lot of these like security, problems and dealing with them at scale. Um, yeah, it's mostly it on my side. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you, Raphael. I'm going to ask you the same question. If you're limited to give them just one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can I think there's a balance between like the technical and policy side of things. And I think there's, ways to I think basically the intersection of those two is where actual impact happens. So I'd say like, making sure not to just like pigeonhole yourself and just, pure policy work, I think is good, to be able to balance that out with a deep technical understanding. I think is important.
Good. Thank you very much. Both of you inspired me to mention a few things. One is to tell people that the large majority of our students are working full time. So that is the norm in our program. So our curriculum is designed with that in mind. And that's always been the case. In terms of, and this is something Kathleen referred to, in terms of coming to an Ivy League university, why? Why bother? Why do that? There are a couple of principal things. One is the interaction with the faculty there, and the second one is the interaction with the peers that you meet there and that you're in class with and that you deal with. And so those are both equal elements in terms of that exposure to faculty and interaction with them and working with them and that thinking, but also everything you get, and Kathleen was talking about that, from this group of people, your peers, your classmates that you'll be meeting and working with. And then also just to underscore what was said previously, we are very devoted to our students' success. Student comes in, they join Brown, they join our program, they join Brown for life. And we are very devoted to supporting the students and helping them successfully complete their degree. Next slide, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm here to talk a little bit more about the master student resources that we offer. You've heard a lot from our current students and from Deborah and Tara about the program, but we have layers of support for you at Brown University. And that's one of the things that makes us distinctive among our peers is for our master's students, we really have folks who are dedicated to your success during your time at Brown. Understanding that as a master's student, you're here with us for a more limited amount of time than you would be if you were an undergraduate student or a PhD student. So the Center for Master Student Excellence is really there to assist you with all of the things that you might need while you're with us at Brown. So student affairs, career and professional development. We are the house for all master's things. We put on a ton of events alongside programs and alongside centers and offices in order to sort of introduce you to Brown resources, help you network across your program and across the university with folks outside of cybersecurity. So important to keep in mind as you're navigating your search is sort of like, what does the support look like while you're at Brown with us? And really for us, we have a ton of layers of support from your department to the Center for Master Student Excellence and all the way to university-wide centers and offices. So that being said, I'll hand it over to Tara to talk a little bit more in depth about that career and professional development support we offer.
All right, I'll try my best to scratch the surface. Like pretty much everyone has mentioned, there are really a wealth of career services opportunities available. So the Division of Masters in Professional Programs, like Victoria said, provides workshops held every month. These are all held, or majority at least, are held both in person and virtually. So that support is there for both on-campus and virtual students. These workshops range from topics like maximizing your resume and your cover letter, optimizing your LinkedIn profile, as well as more specialized topics such as salary negotiations, specific job search strategies, and targeted interviewing skills, including technical interviews. We also have a individual career advising session. So we have a career advisor who is specifically dedicated to STEM fields who you could meet with, but beyond that, with any of our career advisors, you can set up individual coaching sessions where on a one-on-one level, you could learn more about finding jobs that are best suited to your skills and your interests. And you can also do mock interviews or mock cover letter reviews tailored specifically to the position or the positions that you're either applying to or plan to apply to. And then, as you can see linked here, we have a career site that is specifically devoted to our master's students. At any time, that site holds hundreds of recruiting opportunities. This is including careers as well as internships are available on the website as well, and all those resources apply for those. Um, Brown has the Center for Career Exploration for undergraduate and master's students, which widens your access to career resources. They host alumni panels, career fairs, industry speakers who visit campus or hold virtual sessions, and you will receive lifelong access to Handshake through Brown to continually have access to these internship and job opportunities, and as well as to have access to a very strong alumni network. That is one of the lifelong benefits of attending Brown is a very connected alumni network. We even have our own alumni networking portal, and this would allow you to find alum in your specific field or even specific companies that you're interested in working with. So if you have a specific position or a company that you really aspire to work with, you can find alums who work with or have connections there to connect with them and maybe get advice. Um, and even outside of the master's program division, so if this wasn't enough for you, Brown University as a whole has their own wide set of career resources available. Brown offers a formal mentoring network of alumni and graduate students, and Brown University has career-specific advisors available to all students. So we've mentioned the interdisciplinary study. No matter where your interests range, sort of for an internship or a career, there are so many people here and lots of resources who are ready to work with you. All right, next slide.
Great, thanks, Tara. So I'm going to talk some more about the application requirements so that you're set up for success moving forward. So just sort of running through what we're going to require you to submit as a part of your application, whether you're applying for spring or fall, your transcripts. We want to make sure that we have all of your transcripts from institutions that you've attended after secondary school. So anything that has coursework that you've completed, grades that you've had, make sure that you're submitting all of that. Your unofficial transcripts are fine for the purposes of your application. So those unofficial transcripts can come from your university central portal, whatever that might look like for you. However, if you do end up being admitted and matriculating at Brown, we're going to require you to follow up with official transcripts before you matriculate. If you attended an institution outside of the United States for your undergraduate degree, you do not have to submit a credential evaluation upon application. We'll have you follow up, much like with the official transcripts, with a credential evaluation if you end up matriculating at Brown. However, like I said, for your application, we'll just accept your unofficial transcripts for application review. Your CV or your resume should outline your skills, your work experience, your academic experiences, your personal statement, which will cover a lot of very specific items, your goals as they pertain to the cybersecurity program, why you're interested in Brown University, why you're interested in our cybersecurity in particular. We want to make sure that you spend a lot of time with that personal statement. Be specific. Let us understand and get to know you as a candidate, as a person. It's one of the only opportunities that you have to be able to really communicate with us in your own words why you're interested in the program. And that being said, you should treat it as a professional piece of writing. You should proofread it. You should have somebody else look over it. It is an opportunity for us to get an understanding of your communication skills and whether or not you're ready for the level of writing that we're going to require you in a Brown Master's program. We require 3 letters of recommendation for your application to be complete if you're an external candidate. If you're a current Brown University undergraduate student applying for a 5th-year master's, we're only going to require 2 letters of recommendation. For the external candidates, though, we do require all 3 in order for your application to be complete. Again, much like with your personal statement, this is an opportunity that you have to select your recommenders. Select folks who know you really well, who can speak well to your candidacy in a master's program. If you're a recent graduate, we're going to say submit 2 letters of recommendation at least from academia, 1 professional letter of recommendation. But if you're further out, that might look a little bit different. Definitely select folks who can say more about you than just, this person got in the 10%, top 10% of grades in my class, or, this person was always present in class. Really choose folks who can speak to you as a member of a classroom community, who can speak to your goals about the program, who can speak to your interest in a master's program, and also how successful you'll be based off of their experience with you. We're going to have you submit an application fee, although I will say for folks on this call, we're not going to have you pay the application fee because we're going to waive that fee based off of your attendance. So like I said earlier, we waive the application fee for all event attendees. If you have any issues with that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me directly. I'll put my email address in the chat in a little bit, and we can help navigate that for you, but there's no code or anything like that. You simply won't be prompted for payment. Some information about standardized testing. We don't require the GRE. However, if you do not speak English as your native language, we might require you to submit English language proficiency exam scores. The only tests that you can use to satisfy those requirements are the TOEFL and the IELTS. Talk a little bit more about that personal statement. It's really important to us that we get an understanding of your candidacy. We have a holistic review process. We look at all of the components of your application when we're making a decision. So like I was saying earlier, make sure that your interests, your goals, as they pertain to your specific track, computer science or policy, are clear in that personal statement. Make sure that you're harkening back to your background, how your background might serve you in the program. Make sure you're following instructions too. So, 800 words, if we say 800 words, we mean 800 words, right? So make sure that you're following those instructions when you're submitting any answers to your personal statement. Prerequisite course requirements. So this is really important to us that it's clear on your transcript that you meet any prerequisite course requirements for admission to the program. Those specifically come into play with the computer science track. You're required to have an undergraduate degree from a STEM or a social science discipline, but we want to make sure that you also have undergraduate level coursework in math that covers the courses that you're seeing: calc, discrete math, probability, statistics. So make sure that that's evident on your transcript. You can take a look at your transcript digitally before you submit it. That's especially, why it's important for us to have all of your coursework from any, undergraduate institutions that you've attended so that we can make sure that you're meeting those prerequisite course requirements. We also want to make sure that you have undergraduate level coursework in computer science and the course coverage that you're seeing on the screen as well. So that's sort of what we're reviewing your transcript for. And then for folks who are interested in the policy track, not so much specific requirements, but we want to make sure that it's clear from your transcript and the items that you're submitting for your application, that you have coursework that involves significant writing. If you want to submit an additional statement that outlines a writing sample, you can submit that as well. But we want to make sure that your coursework involves, like I said, significant writing, and that should be clear from your transcript.
Can I add something there, Victoria, to
Yes,
that?
please do.
Okay, so first of all, in terms, you want to go back to the prior slide. In terms of transcripts, it's not uncommon that we have students apply who already have an undergraduate degree of some sort. So in addition to your undergraduate transcript, which Victoria mentioned, also you should give us a transcript anywhere you went to school. So any graduate degree you might have as well. In terms of for the policy track, if you have written papers that are 10 pages or more, then my advice to you is to list them. List the title of them, maybe give us just a sentence describing them and the grade you received in it. So, and that shows your ability to do research, research and writing, and courses where you had citations or that kind of research reflected in citations. So please make sure to include, you have a chance to include that, and please do.
Thank you. That's excellent advice, Deborah. A note about standardized testing, like I said earlier, the GRE is not required for the Cybersecurity Master's program. However, if you do not speak English as your native language and you do not or will not have a degree from an institution where the sole language of instruction is English, then we are going to require you to submit either the TOEFL or the IELTS to satisfy your English language proficiency requirement. So if you speak Spanish as your native language, but you have a degree from the United Kingdom, the English-speaking parts of Canada, the United States, then you've attended an institution most likely where the sole language of instruction is English, so we will waive that requirement for you. If you have any questions about that, of course, you're welcome to reach out to us. The required minimum scores are on the screen in front of you: a 105 on the TOEFL and an 8 on the IELTS. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as you're navigating your fit for the program. We offer scholarships for the cybersecurity program. You're automatically considered for those scholarships as a part of your application. They are limited, so keep that in mind, but they are 25% and 50% of tuition. Some important dates and deadlines to keep in mind. My biggest piece of advice for folks applying to master's programs is it's very different from applying to undergraduate programs where you see a common set of application requirements, a common set of dates, deadlines, things like that. Even within the same university, we can have different dates and deadlines. So definitely take screenshots, look at recordings of sessions, and check out our website to make sure that you're staying up to date on those dates and deadlines. Our next cohort is entering for spring 2026. So we are deep in the throes of that right now. I know we've already had some applications come through. So the priority deadline has passed. However, the regular deadline for our spring 2026 entry is November 1st. And you can expect to hear from us later on in November with your decision. And then for any current Brown University students who are graduating a little early, who want to apply for the fifth year option, then that application is also due on November 1st. Looking ahead to fall 2026, our priority application deadline is February 1st, and then our final deadline is April 1st for external applicants. Again, any current Brown University students who are applying for the fifth year master's, that application is going to be due by May 1. One of the most common questions that I get when we talk about priority deadlines is what is the benefit of applying priority? For folks who are applying to the residential version of the program, one of the priority or one of the perks of a priority deadline is you're admitted to Brown earlier. You get access to Brown University resources like housing waitlists early. But for everybody on the call, whether or not you're applying for online or in residence, the benefit of the priority deadline is you hear from us earlier and you get access to Brown resources in general. So, like your Brown University email address, you can start communicating with the program, all of those important things to really get yourself settled before the classes start. You can start after you are enrolled, which happens early if you are admitted or if you're applying by that priority deadline. So now we're going to start to take some questions from the Q&A. So I see that we already have some. I know folks have been answering them in the chat as well. That being said, definitely reach out to us if you have any questions. I'll add some email addresses into the chat so you can copy them down. But let's take a look at that Q&A and see what folks are asking about. First question, what do research opportunities for policy track students look like? I'm very keen on working as a research assistant within a cyber master's program. Deborah, do you want to kick things off and then maybe a student can help answer as well?
Sure, of course. Thanks, Victoria. So it's very common at Brown for students to participate in research. Undergraduate students, master's students, PhD students, obviously. That's why they're here, one of the PhD students. So it's very, very common to be doing that. The Brown is remarkable in the accessibility to faculty compared to other universities. So if there's a particular professor doing research you're interested in, there's no barrier to emailing them. You can stop by in their office hours, whatever, even if you haven't met them before. Talk to them about their research, you ask how you can get involved and so forth. Some of these positions are paid, some of them are not paid. It really just depends on the structure of that particular research stream that's going on. So the short answer is there are research opportunities, and then the student will look into, and even before a student arrives, and I've had this happen before, students are already looking at Brown faculty, what they're doing, getting in touch with them, seeing about the opportunities to work with them while they're here.
Anything else folks want to add about research? Alrighty. How will professional certifications like the CompTIA Security Plus help you with your application if you don't have a lot of working experience in cybersecurity?
So as has been said a few times, we do a holistic review, and we really spend time with your application. We don't just sort of look at it from a distance and go, yes, no, whatever. We really look through everything very closely in this holistic review. So we're looking at your transcripts. We're looking at your personal statement. That is anywhere in that application where you have a chance to speak to us, really take strong advantage of that. Of course, it should be well written, but really use it to tell us about you. In the recommendation letters, we look at those very seriously. So you want that specificity about you, your achievements, what makes you remarkable, how you compare to your peers. Sometimes you have to educate your recommenders a little bit to, let them know the kinds of things that need to be in that letter. So we're looking at, all of those things. So in terms of certifications, we don't require any by any means, but it's another indicator to us of someone who is interested and already active in the field.
Fantastic. Another question about the IELTS, if somebody got their bachelor's from a university in the United States. So like we said earlier about the English language proficiency exams, if you have a degree from an institution where the language of instruction is English, which in the United States, that would be the case. You do not have to submit the IELTS. We will waive that requirement. Do you have to be in person to be a research assistant? If you are 100% online, is it much less probable that you'll find a position?
No, not at all. And in fact, also too, we have in the computer science department, which the cybersecurity program is part of the computer science department, we have a very active multi-decade endowed TA program. So it's unique at Brown, and I think it's unique in the world. So pretty much every student connected with CS will TA at one point or another, and often multiple times, both undergraduate and graduate students. So graduate students can TA, and I've had myself personally quite a number of graduate student TAs over the years. And within the cybersecurity program, then TAs who are online, or students in our cybersecurity program who are online students have TA'd, and then students who are in person can TA as well. So there's no impediment to that.
Fantastic. Any tips or advice for writing a strong personal statement or asking for letters of recommendation? What are some key things we should mention or emphasize? I know I already talked about this, so Deborah, do you want to weigh in and give your perspective?
Yes. So in terms of the personal statement, again, anywhere that you're permitted in the application to speak to us directly, take full advantage of it. Of course, it should be extremely well written. We're looking at the quality of your written expression, your ability to communicate in that medium, but also to tell us why do you want to be at Brown? Why do you want to study cybersecurity at Brown? If you have experience in cybersecurity, could give one or two examples that you think are, particular examples that show different attributes that you have. Or if you're interested in cybersecurity, something that particularly interests you, also talk about the kinds of things you want to achieve as a student, things you have interest in doing there. And if you have, ideas about what you want to do in the future, and don't worry if you don't, many students don't, but if you have particular career aspirations, tell us about those. So a lot of specificity, really a lot of dense information in there is useful. In terms of your letter of recommendation, as I said, usually in the United States, if you're asking faculty members, your former professors to write letters, this is a cottage industry for us. We write recommendation letters all the time. So they usually know what they're doing and what kind of bells to strike, what we're looking for in terms of content. But for professional recommendations, or also in some other countries, the way letters of reference are done are a little bit different. They're much more summary. They could even be, I've seen them, they're just 2 or 3 sentences at a very, very general level. A letter like that is not doing anything for you. I had this student in my class. He was a good student. I recommend him. That doesn't do a thing for you. So that's what I was saying earlier. Sometimes you need to educate your recommenders a little bit. And so what we're looking for is, this person took this course with me. They got they got an A. They had a project on this particular thing, and their project was outstanding because of, or during the course, they had an insight about XYZ that they conveyed, really well to the rest of the class. They served as a role model, something about what went on in that class and how you stood out. If you took more than one course with that person, then they would do that a couple of times. To talk about your suitability for master's work, how you compare to your peers, all of those kinds of things.
Excellent advice. How do we support master's students who might want to get a PhD in cybersecurity?
Right. So for students, we offer 2 master's degrees in the computer science department. There's a master's degree in cybersecurity, which is why you're here. And we also offer a master's degree in computer science. Being admitted as a master's student in the Brown Computer Science department does not automatically put you on a track to get a PhD. You can apply to be admitted to the computer science PhD program at Brown. So, but certainly if you were admitted then into the PhD program at Brown, the fact that you already have achieved your master's and done that coursework and so forth would count towards your PhD. I hope that answers your question sufficiently.
I think so, yeah. Are alumni allowed to audit classes? What does that look like for folks who might want to return to Brown after they graduate?
We normally don't have, I can't think of an example where alumni have come back to audit classes. Many of them are pretty busy, or I think almost all of them that I can think of are quite busy. But certainly, I mean, if students are in town or alumni are in town, and that does happen, people come through town, they want to stop by and sit in on a class or certainly meet with us. That's more common. They want to get together. to discuss something or have a lunch or dinner with a few people, that's very common. So that's, completely welcome. And certainly if someone wants to sit in on a class, certainly, that would be fine. We also have occasions where some of our online students who are taking our cybersecurity degree as an online student, come to Providence, or are going to be in the area, or come to Boston for business or something. And so they say, hey, I'm taking this course now, could I sit in on the classroom version of it that's concurrently going on? And so I've had that happen myself several times. And so I was like, sure. And so then they'll come and sit in, instead of they'll sit in on the classroom session, whatever the subject is for that week. So that's certainly possible.
And then another question, for the policy track, is there a quantitative requirement for folks who are interested in the policy track? And then for folks who want to submit GRE scores, of course it's optional, but does that GRE score, could a quantitative GRE score make up for a lack of quantitative coursework?
Certainly, if you have, I have seen in applications, if you want to submit if you've taken the GRE, don't take it just for us, is my advice, because it's not required. But if you had taken the GRE and you're pretty happy with your score, I have seen students include it in their application. So you're welcome to do that. In terms of quantitative courses, I mean, the policy track is specifically designed for people without a technical degree. So we don't require, there's no coding as part of the policy degree. We don't require you to have those abilities to pursue successfully the policy track. So it's, there's not that kind of technical element or quantitative element that's required.
Fantastic. Question about getting the recording. Yes, we recorded the session and we will send it out in a couple of days once it's ready and up on YouTube. Can you switch from online to in residence and vice versa, Deborah? No, right?
Okay. Yeah. The answer to that is no. So one of the things we asked you to select at the time, so Kathleen referred to the fact that she switched tracks once she was in the program. So she came in and actually thinking about today, both of our people who are on here today have CS backgrounds, and then coming into the program, both selected the policy track. So and that's we have people who do that. We have people who have non-technical degrees at all who go on the policy track. We have people who have CS backgrounds that clearly go on the CS track, and other technical backgrounds. So it's possible to switch tracks once you're in the program, and we have a pretty simple process for that, which Kathleen and I did last year when she switched tracks. And then, but when you apply, we ask you to designate your track, but we also ask you to designate whether you're applying for the online format or the on-campus format. And you must make your decision at that time. So we're asking you for the next 2 years to decide, okay, do I want to be an online student, or do I want to be an on-campus student in residence at Brown? It's not possible to switch from one to the other. So you choose that format when you apply, and there are strong administrative reasons why we can't have people switching back and forth between in-person and online. So you must make that selection for what you're going to do with the next 2 years of your life at the time you apply.
Fantastic. Thank you. Can you do both tracks? I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. If you come from a CS undergraduate program, can you do both tracks?
Right. So one master's degree is 8 courses. And for each of our tracks, 8 courses are required to get the degree. So it would be difficult. You'd have to be doing 16 courses or whatever. So there is some overlap. But having said that, let me say the following. If someone has, and Raphael a bit, alluded to this a bit. If someone is in the policy track, and there is one of the, for example, CS track technical courses, electives that they want to take, which are courses in our other courses in our computer science department, we'll let them take it. So in that case, our baseline, and I hope this has come across to you, our baseline is that we want you to be successful, and we want you to successfully complete your degree. So it does happen that a student will come to me, for example, and say, hi, I'm in the policy track, but I'd like to take this course that's available as part of the CS track curriculum, or another course in the computer science department that requires certain technical knowledge. If that student has the background to take that course successfully, and in our program, you must get a B or above in all courses, to complete the degree. So if, our judgment is that that student can successfully take that technical course and do well in it, then we will give them permission to do that. So there are a lot of examples of that happening over the years. It's not common, but it does happen. I'll just give you one example that springs to mind. Several years ago, we had a student come into the program. He's graduated a while ago, but he was particularly interested in computer vision. And so that's not part of our normal cybersecurity curriculum, but he had a background in it already, and he wanted to take the computer science department computer vision course. So he asked if he could do that, and we gave him, he had a background in it, he had knowledge, he had a particular interest, so we gave him permission to take that course, and that counted as one of his 8 courses to complete his degree. So it's a bit of a long answer, but I hope I've made clear the parameters of that.
Thank you. So there's a question about the modality, understanding that the program is offered both online and in person. If a person wants to take a course online but be in residence, is that available to students to be able to sort of have the courses offered in a hybrid fashion?
I'm sorry, Victoria, can you run that by me one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure. So does every class, if you're in residence, have to be taken in person? Or if you're in residence, can you take one of your courses online?
Okay, so if a student is an on-campus student and is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, they can take as many of their courses online as they want. If a student is an on-campus student and they are an international student, so they are not a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, they are allowed by U.S. visa rules to take only one online course per semester. They cannot take more than one online course per semester. If they do that, it wreaks havoc with their visa status and it gets into very dangerous territory very quickly. So that's a requirement. So if you're an international student in residence in the on-campus format, you can take a maximum of one online course per semester. If you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, you can take as many online as you want. Although, so people do take some online, and especially, as I said, many of our students are working full time. So there might be occasions where, that's more amenable. So I hope that answers that question as well.
Definitely. So that's it for questions in the Q&A. I'm going to put my email address in the chat. If folks want to reach out to me directly, I can connect you with any of the resources we've talked about on the call, the folks that we've had on the call as well. So feel free to use that email address if you want to follow up and connect with us. But that being said, thank you for joining us. And thank you to our panelists who did a fantastic job. Most of all, our current students. Thank you both for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedules to join us and talk about the program. All right, folks, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.